how do you said that that like trademarks and patents they're like kind of stop at the border. They start at the border of the country. So if there is a manufacturer in China that's selling the same product as me, maybe I have something that's proprietary but not patented.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's kind of common, right, in how a product might be built and manufactured.
So
what can I do to protect myself, the United States?
Yeah, so what I would do, number one, if you start a new brand, file a trademark. That's easy and cost effective to do. You know, it costs like $300 or something to file a trademark on the United States Patent and Trademark Office website. And then have the right non-disclosures and contracts in place with your factory. With that trademark, you know, you can send it to our customs and border agency that will, you know, try to keep an eye out for those products you're importing it.
Getting ready to go on live for everyone that is watching the stream. I'm going to talk about how to build an e-commerce brand in the time of crisis. So if you guys have an e-commerce brand, you're thinking about launching an e-commerce brand, you want to make sure you stay tuned. It's going to be about 30 minutes. So it's starting in about 2 minutes from now. So stay tuned, stay locked, and be ready for some valuable nuggets to be dropped. So stay tuned.
So besides having the right contracts and non-disclosures in place with your factory, I'd really focus on building the brand out and just protecting that brand through a trademark.
Making sure your customers love you. That's been the theme of the last 2 days. This company here, the BlendJet, you might know them as well. They invented the world's first portable blender. They patented it. It works really well. It's simple. It's portable. It blends things. It's not like it's industrial strength as a foreign blender of a pizza, right? What they did early on was they brought a lawyer onto the team, I think for something like 2 or 3% equity, and it's a small patent lawyer. And this person files like 3 cease and desists a week.
I got to put on my watch so I can make sure I stay on top of time.
Small and growing, you know, brand, not much money, but because he has equity in the company, he has this whole system set up to squash all of the people trying to compete with them. And from both
that sounds awesome.
And a brand standpoint, because people are trying to resell the exact same product, and then other people are just trying to make cheap knockoffs of it or whatever. And so if you can get a lawyer on retainer or in the company to help you, especially if you have a patentable product. But if you can't, focus on building that brand moat. That it's what will always differentiate you. No one can steal that relationship you have with your customers. Nathan, go. I know you got to run. Thanks so much for joining us. And guys, if you're guys and gals out there, if you're ever looking for product sourcing expertise, look no further than Sourcify and Nathan and his team.
Cheers. Wish me luck, everyone. And thanks again, Derek and the team for having me. And, you know, like I said, with manufacturing, it's a matter of just finding your factory. And if you have questions about that, you know, we're always happy to answer.
Awesome. Talk to you later. All right. We're going to be on time.
There we are. Hey.
Right. Looking good, sounding good.
Awesome. And how are you?
Doing great. Yeah, it's been a while since we've caught up with each other, but I'm really excited for your session here today. I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about you and what you're going to talk about.
Awesome. Well, first of all, shout out to M. Smith, says, hey, Jonte. Hey, M. Smith, how are you? I'm very active in the chat room, so I hope you guys are prepared for that as well. Hey, Megan. I'm Jonte Delane. For those who do not know me, I am a sought-after digital strategist. I'm the founder of Digital Branding Institute and also founder and chief strategist of Digital Delane, which is a full-service agency. So I guess I can hop right in, Derek. Awesome. So I'll go ahead and all right, awesome. So I'll go ahead and do that now. Let me quickly share my screen with everyone. Pardon the messy desktop. Clearly, I was prepared. All right. Okay, let me scoot this out of the way here. Awesome. All right, great. So listen, this is going to be a jam-packed session. I know it's about lunchtime right now, so maybe you guys are eating at the desk. I don't know, but be sure to take plenty of notes because I'm going to drop some valuable jewels. And what I'm going to talk about today is how to grow your e-commerce brand in the time of crisis. All right. If you like what you hear in this session, feel free to upvote if you upvote the session. If you're seeing the replay, do the same thing. All right. And if you are active on social media, which I know most of you are, go ahead and follow me, tag me. For each of the statistics and valuable gems that I drop, feel free to add them on social media. All right, so let's get down to it. I'm going to start off with who I am. I mentioned earlier that I'm a sought after digital strategist. I also focus on helping to build digital brands. A lot of people don't know this about me, but I started my marketing career as a DJ in the Bay Area, and then started to help bands and artists in the Bay Area to build a fan base online. That was my first foray into digital. I also took dip my toe in the water of building a social media network when I was at Cal Berkeley to compete with some other guy on the East Coast who had a social network that was just for college students. I thought it would never work, but now he's worth over $63 billion. And let's just say I don't have that much in the bank. So that's a little bit about me. As I mentioned earlier, I'm also the founder of Digital Branding Institute, and I'm also the former senior digital brand manager for USC, right on. And I've accomplished a lot of things throughout my 15-year career. But one accomplishment I'm most excited about is last year I actually received my private pilot's license. So you see there a picture of me and my instructor flying a 172 over LAX in the Los Angeles area. So what we do at Digital Delane is we help to build brands, and we've helped a lot of e-commerce brands lately, a lot of brick and mortar brands who are looking to build e-commerce and direct to consumer strategies. We are able to help with that. So if you're in the place for an agency partner or someone where you need some advice and guidance to sort of navigate how to build an e-commerce brand in this market, feel free to hit me up. Let's talk about it. You can reach me at digitaldelane.com right there in the contact section. All right, so now that commercial's out of the way, let's get down to the nitty gritty. So for the agenda, I'm going to talk about how to build a future-proof digital brand. I'm going to give you the exact steps that we use for some of our clients, the agency, for some of the approaches and tactics that I use with all the organizations that I've worked with, from NBC Universal to Coca-Cola, Verizon, Paramount Pictures, and USC. I'm also going to talk about how you can leverage some of your existing assets and resources. Obviously, times are tough where you need to focus inward to fill in some voids where we can build up our internal team and our internal processes so that we can make it through this time. I'm also going to talk about how to deepen your loyalty with existing customers and focusing on that top tier customer. I'm also going to talk about how to explore the benefits of collaboration. I'm going to give you a specific pandemic marketing plan, and I'm going to talk about ways that you can embrace the pivot, because it doesn't matter what business you're in, you're going to have to pivot. So let's take it back. Let's think about all the recent crises that happened that affected businesses across the board. I remember this is 2008, 2009, when this happened. The Occupy Wall Street movement was essentially created because of the shady and unethical business practices of the finance and housing industries. Consumers basically had enough. It was almost to a point where if you had the word corporation in your title, it had a negative connotation, right? And so that's when these large brands started to really position themselves as small and become more transparent. So that's when you started to see more personality out of brands, right? You started to look at the type of commercials that were being put on TV were no longer commercial, right? There were people that looked like you and me, people that didn't have necessarily that commercial look, right? There were, interracial couples, transgender couples, so on and so forth. And you just notice that change. And it's because I think the Occupy Wall Street movement and the financial crisis in 2008 was a catalyst for that, right? And then you have another crisis. We all may be familiar with this picture, the Me Too movement. This was a movement that really made organizations and brands accountable for the people that they associate themselves with, the people they sponsor, the people they hire, and so on. And you start to see really the dominoes fall in terms of sexual misconduct, so on and so forth. And social media went wild on this, right? And they were forcing these organizations to disassociate themselves with these types of individuals. And then you have this. I mean, come on. You know, I'm going to speak about this during a crisis, right? The Black Lives Matter movement. It's very important to understand how, at least for certain in my lifetime, I never came across anything like this from a marketing perspective, right? Now is a time where brands are forced to be accountable by essentially picking a side, by saying if Black Lives Matter or not, right? There's a difference in that. And you have brands that went all into that movement. And you have brands that have not said anything about it. And their segment of their customer base is looking for those types of responses from brands. And all of this is happening in the midst of the worst pandemic of our lifetime. I'm going over a lot of crises here, people, and it's like we have to make sure as brand leaders, owners, and business owners and so on that we're prepared for this type of stuff to create that future-proof brand. Because the pandemic, as we know it, is affecting businesses across the board. We all know some of us are working from home as we speak. We're probably on the clock right now. We have businesses that have closed their doors. We have families that aren't able to connect like they once did. But we also have to understand that this is a transformation, not of the economy, but of the way in which we communicate. And when we come out on the back end of this, we have to really utilize and focus on digital as the main point of contact, because now it's more than just, this pandemic is more than just an economic crisis, but it's an economic transformation. You know, I have parents, grandparents, and so on now who know how to FaceTime, how to Zoom, and so on. And so now it's expected that they would know how to communicate with people using the digital platform. And as a brand in the digital space, we need to take that into consideration when building out our marketing and communication channels. Because now a company must strive to be as dynamic as the behavior of its consumers. And this is so important because if you are not nimble enough, and I know this is commonplace for many people, but I think it's well worth reiterating that if you are not nimble enough and dynamic enough to meet consumers where they are and to communicate with consumers the way in which they are accustomed to or want to be communicated with, then you are not going to survive on the back end of this thing. So I want to give you tools and tips and tactics that I've employed for some of my clients at Digital Delane and all the organizations and high profile individuals that I've worked with to build that future-proof digital brand. Now, the first tip, of course, is to build that digital brand, right? We have a sharp uptick in clients that we're working with based on them focusing on building a digital footprint and a digital brand because it's the only medium that they have to connect with their target consumers. Like, let's think about it. Back in the day in 2008, when there was an economic recession, people had the ability to actually go into stores. There may not be a lot of foot traffic, but they had that ability. Now, that's no longer an option. So businesses are forced to go and focus on building a digital brand in order to connect with their consumers. So if you are in the digital space, if you offer any digital services, I'm sure you can raise your hand and give me an amen or hell yeah in the chat section if you are have received or an uptick in business based on those services that you provide. So building a digital brand is so important because one, it covers the 3 tenets that are most important for your brand. That's identity, visibility, and credibility. One of the ways that you're able to leverage all 3 of those tenets from an e-commerce perspective is to focus on influence marketing and ambassadorships. Well, why do I say influence marketing and not influencer? No, influence marketing certainly is the priority. So what do I mean by that? I believe influencer marketing is starting to plateau. That's right. I said it here today. It's starting to plateau. And the reason why that is because now you have more influencers that are coming into the field, and they are starting to work with brands that may be outside of brands that they would natively associate themselves with, and with the parameters that the social network set for calling out exactly what brands you're working with and making sure that that's visible. It's almost become an advertisement. And I'm sure we all can agree with that. So we all know how consumers feel about advertisements. It's not as effective as it once was. So as a brand, I think you should focus on influence marketing, meaning that aligning yourself with individuals of influence, but not necessarily an influencer. And there's nothing wrong, of course, with focusing on building relationships with influencers. But I think when it comes to building stronger, longer lasting relationships as an e-commerce brand, having a person of influence as an ambassador is the way to go. And that's going to allow you to check all the boxes in terms of building that digital brand. It's going to allow you to build an identity around that person of influence. It's going to allow you to create more visibility by having that person's network become aware of your brand. And it's also going to increase your credibility because naturally, sort of the juice that person of influence has is going to connect with your brand, very similar to grabbing a backlink of a high value domain name and passing on some of that influence and juice to your domain. It's the same type of idea. So that would be the first step that I would take as an e-commerce brand to make sure that you're connecting with those people of influence. And you've seen it all the time. You may see Neil Patel, you may see Jay Baer, Mary Smith, so on and so forth, that are endorsing some of these products and endorsing some of these SaaS companies and offerings. So think about that. Now, taking a deeper dive, I want to focus on specifically when it comes to building your digital identity, what that means and what entails when it comes to building that digital identity. And of course, as you see it on the screen, it's create more content. Create more content. It's so important now more than ever. Why? Because people are consuming more content than they have in the past 6 months, right? You have production studios, your favorite shows are no longer filming. So there are only reruns, things like that, right? So that leaves an opportunity for your brand to create more content and build better relationships and create more awareness for your brand. Now, if you're having problems creating content, obviously, you know, the number one rule is to repurpose what you have. So if we all know about Thanksgiving, for those who celebrate and those who eat turkeys, right? We know that there's leftover turkey after every Thanksgiving meal. So what do? You repurpose it, right? You make turkey sandwiches, turkey casserole, soup, I don't know, whatever's your thing, right? You're going to naturally repurpose it. So you can do the same thing here when it comes to creating content. And when you connect with that influencer, a person of influence, right? If they have a live stream or a blog post, you can begin to repurpose some of their content and post it on all of your channels, right? As a way to maintain and build that relationship with that ambassador that you have connected with in order to help grow the awareness of your e-commerce brand. And naturally, if you don't plan out your content, it's not really going to go out, right? I mean, I know for me, if it's not on my calendar, it's just not happening, right? So it's important to make sure you have that content calendar planned, and you're also incorporating the content from the other strategic partners, people of influence, so on and so forth within that calendar so that you can stay on top of these things. And of course, if you're struggling and just don't have the time to create content, I'm sure we all can say that, simply batch content, right? I mean, take this example as baking a cookie. You wouldn't bake one cookie at a time, right? That would be just ridiculous, right? You would create a batch of cookies and bake them at the same time. So do the same thing with your content, whether it's a content that's affecting, you're considering your personal brand, or content that you're creating on behalf of your brand or a brand that you represent. You certainly would want to batch that content. Now, I want to make sure everyone is with me. I know I'm going over a lot of tips and tricks. I'm known for hopping on my soapbox, right, and giving you my impression and my suggestions and recommendations to help you, just like I would do with any other client. So I want to make sure that we're all caught up here and everything else. So just give me, I'm with me, or give me some type of acknowledgement in the chat section. All right, awesome. So I'm going to take a deeper dive again into your digital visibility, which is essentially the second tenet of digital branding. So when it comes to digital visibility, during a crisis, in particular right now during this pandemic, this is a great time to do digital ads. Why? Well, because a lot of brands are starting to scale back their ad spend, pushing it back till the next quarter, beginning of the year, or canceling their ad spend altogether, which leaves room for you to take advantage. It's supply and demand. The demand has gone down because of all these brands scaling back, which includes more demand for ad space, which also decreases the price overall for an ad campaign. So it's a great time to spend, to include or continue your ad spend during this crisis. When you want to consider where should you be focusing on, you should certainly would consider display, because that has took the biggest hit in terms of ad spend in with various brands. Social media and digital video. Those are all key opportunities during this time of crisis that you can increase your digital visibility. And when you figure out what type of content you should create, and really where are there additional opportunities, looking at the statistics here and looking at this chart, we know that streaming services have increased, as well as smartphone usage and just general content on the internet obviously has increased. So that means if you have a YouTube channel, if you have a live streaming show, which certainly should be a consideration during this time of crisis, you know that the consumptions of those particular activities have increased. Therefore, it's a great opportunity to dive in. Now, let's talk about the third tenet of digital branding, which is your credibility. And that has a lot to do with your brand voice during this time of crisis. As I mentioned at the top of the presentation, you have plenty of brands who have not taken a stance on what's going on in society. You have brands that have done a great job in doing that. But if you are somewhere in the middle and just really haven't established your brand voice, I have some recommendations for you. First is to get an understanding of exactly what is your brand voice. It's a buzzword that sort of gets thrown around often. But here are the 4 components of a brand voice. Your brand voice. So it's your character, your purpose, language, and your tone. The character is the human characteristics of your brand voice. The purpose is that ownable point of view. The language is the words, the phrases that you use to describe your offering, or even your audience. Some of you being an e-commerce, in the e-commerce industry, may be familiar with AppSumo. If you're on their mailing list, they refer to the AppSumo community as Sumo Links. If you like or know Beyonce, if you're a fan of her, you're part of the Bayhive, right? Or Beehive or Bay, I don't know, whatever it is, right? And then you have your tone, which is your sort of, it's not what you say, but how you say it. It's the order, the rhythm, the pace, sentence structure, all that stuff, right? That go into the copy that is distributed through various channels. So that essentially are the 4 components of your brand voice. And I have a good case study. We all may know this, Wendy's roast. I absolutely love this attempt at establishing a brand voice. Now, with Wendy's roast, if you connected with them on social media, they roast everyone. They roast their competitors. They roast anyone that interact with their brand. No one is safe. But what happens here is they went from servitude to attitude. I'll say it again. They went from servitude to attitude. So Hamburger Helper took a play from Wendy's playbook, and this is an example. PSA, knowing how to mix Hamburger Helper doesn't make you wife material. And Hamburger Helper says, and this makes you husband material? And someone chimes in and says, drive him, you sexy ass glove. And another person responds with, OMG, all these food accounts becoming some clackback champs, and I love it. So this is a good example of brand voice engagement on social media, because the bottom line here is on social platforms, customers don't want to be helped. They want to be engaged. Ooh, I'll let that sink in for a little bit. On social platforms, customers don't want to be helped. They want to be engaged. Now, if you have gone to any virtual summit around social media, any conference, let's say in the past 3 or 4 years, any track on social media had to do with what? Take a guess. Yeah. Social media customer service, right? But if you notice, any social media conference, really, they don't have any customer service sessions anymore. Well, why is that? Because customers don't want to be helped. They want to be engaged. So it's important to understand that as you begin to communicate with your customers on digital platforms, as an e-commerce brand, you want to focus on not only being helpful, but you want to focus on being engaging and entertaining. Very similar to what Wendy's did, if that's aligned with your brand voice. But you should certainly try that, because it's naturally going to get more engagement, especially with the algorithm factors and variables. So Wendy's, because of this crisis, basically spun this and went from roasting to toasting, and basically giving shout outs to people who are doing positive things in the community and society, and then rewarding them with like free nuggets, right? As an example. So that's a good way to shape your brand voice in this time of crisis, and also at the same time have the personality that is rewarded by the algorithms during this time to get more organic reach. So the ultimate goal when building that brand voice is to be memorable, be entertaining, and to be smart. There has to be a smart approach to pretty much all the campaigns that you're doing, in particular during this time of crisis, because if you are a smaller or a startup e-commerce brand, you're battling with the larger brands that are in the market. So you want to focus on doing what you can to beat out the competition and the larger brands. And a good example of that would be Moneyball. I know you're probably like, Gente, what does that have to do with anything? Hold on. So with Moneyball, it's essentially a quintessential example of, David and Goliath stories, small business, big business, so on and so forth, where they use data in order to win. They had limited resources, just like you may have limited resources in this time of crisis, but they looked at their analytics and they used data. If you haven't seen the story or haven't watched the movie or anything, it's starring Brad Pitt. So, usually Brad Pitt movies range from either good to great, right? I think you can argue that. And so definitely check it out, but it's a great story about how you're able to use your internal resources to win. Now, I'm biased. I grew up an Oakland A's fan. I had the opportunity to be a bat boy for a day during that time of crisis. I think I was like maybe, I don't know, 100 pounds soaking wet during that picture, but it was an awesome experience for me, catching fly balls from Mark McGuire, Bash Brothers, all that, or Mike McGuire during that time. And so I followed the A's closely. And being a consultant, I look at, I put my consultant hat on all the movies I watch, the content I consume, and this just really, really spoke to me. So if you don't know the story about Moneyball or what the A's did in order to win during that time, is again, they used the data that they had, they used analytics, and they focused on acquiring individuals that had a certain percentage or certain statistics that really were overperforming or over-indexing on any other, National League, MLB statistic. So what they did was they combined this data, went out and got the right people with a very limited budget. I believe they had like $40 million in personnel budget when you had other franchises that had like 125 million or something like that. And they ended up winning. And so they won first place in the AL West. They set a AL West record of 20 wins in a row. Obviously, if you know history, if you watch baseball, they didn't win the World Series. But another team took that same approach and did the following year. So what does that mean, right? You have the ability to take what you have internally and make something out of nothing. And this particular story was very inspiring to me. And I tell the story every time I speak with clients and stuff like that who are in this position, in particular in this position of crisis, because most people are small dogs compared to, the mammoth brand of Amazon. So let's focus on what we're able to do internally to beat out or at least be competitive with Amazon. Because focusing on e-commerce brands, I have plenty of clients that come to me that were making, $300,000 a month in revenue on their e-commerce store through Amazon, only to have their store be suspended. And now the revenue is zero and they have no brand. So it's a classic case. I plead all of you to grow a brand if you're selling on Amazon as well, and don't put all of your eggs in one basket. So I want to quickly end with 4 Moneyball style tips that'll allow you to win and build a future-proof brand. So develop a pandemic marketing strategy. What does that mean? Well, first step would be to determine who is your current and your potential customers. Who is your current customer? Where are they? Where do they live? Not like, do they live in LA, Oakland, or Orlando, but where do they live online? Is it Facebook? Is it LinkedIn? Is it at events? So on and so forth. And then where do they live? As well as talking to them where they are, and then rework any successful campaigns that you may have. So if there's a campaign that worked last year, rework that and see if you can apply that same approach during this time of crisis. If you had successful print ads, now it's time to focus on Google ads. If you were successfully cold calling, well, no one's in the office anymore, so now you have to focus on email. If you had event marketing that really worked, now obviously you have to go virtual, right? So again, you want to continue to learn and improve on those campaigns if they don't work, because guess what? There's no other way to reach your target audience now, right? So if your email missed the mark, change the subject line. If you didn't have, if you had an ad campaign that didn't convert, try split testing. Try enhancing your targeting, and so on and so forth. Also, deepen loyalty with your existing customers, focusing on that top 20%. Explore the benefits of collaboration, strategic partnerships. We're all in this together, right? We want to focus on splitting some of the ad spend, creating co-branded campaigns, so on and so forth. And of course, embracing the pivot. You obviously have to pivot. When life gives you lemons, what do? You make mojitos, right? Of course. So if you can scale right now based on or if you can scale right now based on the business industry, then obviously you want to make sure that you pack up and make sure that you're able to weather the storm. You want to adapt your ads, your emails to make sure they're not insensitive during these times if you have anything planned or scheduled. And you want to make sure that you're a part of a broader solution. Take a stance as a brand and focus on how you can contribute to the lives of your target audience. Now, if you need any assistance with being smart, being efficient, and being an effective brand during this time of crisis, feel free to hit me up. Let's talk about it. You can reach me at digitaldelane.com on my website if you need help navigating through this time of crisis and building your e-commerce brand. So with that said, I'm a little bit over time, but I'll pass it on to you, Derek.
Oh, that's perfect, on time, and yeah, I love what you're talking about here, and even hinting at is something we talked about in one of our last events was the power of cause marketing, how to implement that really well in e-commerce.
Yep.
I'm going to link here a section from that with, I think this is a session, with Ronnie Sage. This is still definitely relevant. He has a platform called Shopping Gives, which makes cause marketing super easy. And you can find a link to like that tool in the show notes of this. And you can also find this really great interview we did right alongside that one. But I'll worry about it later.
No worries.
One thing on your session I wanted to talk about, or
sure.
ask you about really quick, is being entertaining is a really interesting. You said be memorable, be entertaining, be smart, and I think that sometimes people forget what entertaining can mean to their audience. It's like, you don't have to be pie in the sky entertaining. You don't have to be a sitcom from an entertainment standpoint. But it is true, especially when we're thinking about social brands, that entertainment is the number one reason. Like, you're on social, or you might be engaging with the brand there. But I think at the same time, like, sometimes entertaining, it can actually seem boring to like a lot of people as well. The example I'm thinking about is myself. I do tech tool reviews, and that's my entertainment to people.
Derek, you're not boring, man.
Boring. It's a very boring thing to do, and to sit through 5 minutes of me talking about a tool. Imagining it's not like naturally one of the most riveting things you've ever done, but if you're interested in that tool and it could actually make a difference in your business, I think there's a form of entertainment there that is a little different.
Yeah. And I think it has to do with just personality at the end of the day, right? It doesn't matter what you're talking about. If you can infuse your personality into it, like, listen, I try to do this in the presentation. I'm talking as if I'm talking to someone directly. Hopefully you guys got a sense of my personality in this presentation, right? And it should be the same way when you're communicating with your target audience. And just find an interesting spin, right? If you guys have, a persona defined, you guys should know who you're talking to and what could be entertaining to those individuals. And at the very least, if you don't know how to be entertaining, share something that's entertaining to you, right? And create some engagements around that.
Yeah, and I think the other side of that is not doing the same thing that everyone else is doing. And because that's what, being entertaining from just the uniqueness standpoint is important. I created a podcast, the Future of E-commerce podcast. And before I created it, I said, okay, every podcast in e-commerce has either one person interviewing another person or two people talking to each other over and over again. And I said, I want to do something a little bit different. I want to make it like a full-fledged story. We're going to cut out everything from an interview that like isn't that exciting, and just get that like one nugget from every person. Then I'm going to tell a story all the way through and around that. And it turned out that my creativity got the best of me because doing these podcast episodes is a huge beast of work.
Yeah.
But I can say without a doubt that they're fairly unique, especially in the e-commerce space.
Yeah.
And so I think that was something that I did to follow your guidance in a way, because we have talked in the past about to really make sure we're standing out and being different. So
yeah, and just really quickly, I want to make sure before I go, I want to give a shout out to you because you've been doing a great job hosting this. I'm so glad and happy to be a part of it. I've been following you for since I don't know, maybe 2014, something like that. Yeah, ever since social media marketing world. So you've been doing your thing, man. I'm proud. I've been watching from afar, so I just want to make sure I gave you a shout out.
Thanks, man.
Yep.
And same for you. I love everything that you've been able to create with Digital Branding Institute. And I see you pop up all the time in my feed, and I'm doing something new or different. So I think we're kind of different paths with a similar trajectory.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Which is awesome.
Yep.
Thanks so much for taking the time today.
Of course.
We're moving to our next session now.
All right. Bye, guys.
And definitely make sure and check out digitaldelaney.com, and you've got all the links
yeah.
to work with John Ty directly here. We're going to bring in John, and we're going to talk about a subject that I'm really passionate about. And John Ty, I'm going to jump you down
Sure.
to attendee. Now, a year and a half, 2 years ago, I did a mystery shopper report on 500 of the top e-commerce brands with Simpler.ai, which is outsourced customer service company. And they, with the data we found, we saw that 65% of e-commerce brands have.
All right, so let me stop that. I think we're good.
We dove in a little bit deeper.
If you guys have any questions about anything, let me stop this. If you guys have questions about anything that I've mentioned earlier on in terms of brand building in the digital space during this time of crisis, hit me up, digitaldelaney.com. It's actually a website. We just did a whole agency rebrand. Check us out. Let me know what you think in the contact section on that website. So I'll leave it there. Hopefully you guys got some valuable information from this session. I plan on doing more of these, so let me know if you like what you hear, if you want to see more of them, so on and so forth. But other than that, have a great day, and I'll talk to you guys.